Hello and good morning, and welcome to today's live event. So today we're going to be talking about reimagining the workplace and talking about some quick habits. So over the last few weeks, we've been talking about the need for us to create physical distancing in our workplace environments and what that looks like, from everything from behavioural change to the actual physical changes that we need to be making in those environments. But some of the feedback that we've started to hear about organisations that have already begun transitioning back into those environments is that their office space is feeling quite dead and it's being a little bit depressing. And the reason it is because there's only half of the team that are joining you in the office at the moment. And with that, you've got people spread out. You don't have that density, that energy that happens from people being in close proximity. So the atmosphere of our offices is actually very different to how it normally feels when we're actually got lots and lots of people in there. So, a lot of people are then having to remote in for meetings. So if you've got your team as being on a split shift so that the two of you are no longer in the same space at the same time, and obviously that needs to happen from an operational perspective to ensure that, if one person does become ill, the whole team isn't taken out. So we have some business considerations that we need to be mindful of. But what's happening there is that those that are in the office are in a meeting room together, and then they're having to remote in with the individuals who are not yet back in the office. So there's a real dynamic shift that's happened as a result of this, and we need to be thinking about what we can be doing to try and recreate some of that energy and make sure that our environments don't become too depressing and that we do lose that buzz and atmosphere and the culture that we create in those spaces, because a lot of our culture in our organizations comes from the energy that comes from being in those spaces together. So one of the things that I would really recommend doing is doing a pulse check, just checking in with people and understanding how they're feeling about the workplace environment, what some of their concerns are, what some of their challenges are at the moment, and then sort of working with them to find ways that you can then address some of those challenges to ensure that we're maintaining that culture, but also that energy and that vibrancy that happens within our workplace environments. The other thing that I think we need to start looking at is, what is the real reason people are actually coming into the office every day? Are they coming in because they actually need to? Or are they coming in because of an obligation? So if you've been scheduled out and you are required to be in the office on this particular day because that's the allocated day that you have been given for your team's split shift, what is that? How is that translating to the individual? Are they actually then feeling like, well, it's my day, I have to be in the office, or are they actually have a need that they're going into the office for? And I think it's just about understanding that and then, unpacking that, because every organization is going to be different and every individual is going to be different. But then it's going to actually come down to, well, what are the activities that people are actually doing when they are in the work environment? What are they actually doing when they're there? So it comes down to actually observing. So what we know is that when we go back into the workplace environment, the reason we're going there is because we're wanting to go and collaborate. We're wanting to engage with other people. We're wanting to socialize and to connect, because, when we're at home, we don't have that ability to brainstorm things with other people and sort of bounce ideas together in an environment like we can when we're actually physically there together. We're also wanting to, connect in with people because we don't have that social stimulation when we're at home. We may have that with our partners or our kids or, even a friend that might drop around, but it's very different, the social interaction that we're going to have with our colleagues. So taking a moment to just observe what people are actually doing when they are in the work environment, what you might start to see is that the engagement of people is very different, because they can physically do their bulk of their work at home. What they're actually coming into the office for is going to be very different. It is going to be that social interaction. It is that collaborative nature. So observing that and then sort of starting to look at, well, what can we do from our physical environment to enable this? Because a lot of our workplaces are actually set up to put people at workstations and sit in desks. We've also now got physical distancing requirements in terms of how many people can be in meeting rooms and, what in terms of the 4 square meters per person rule. So that's going to have an impact on the amount of people we can put into our meeting rooms, but also then the number of meeting rooms that we're going to require and what that looks like. So we've taken a bit of a look at what you can be doing to put some really quick things in place to try and address some of these issues for yourselves at the moment and to create a work environment that actually feels good and it feels engaging. So the first thing that I would be highly recommending is cleaning. Now, everyone's been telling you to clean and everyone's saying you're going to have to sanitize and do all that. But what I'm actually talking about is a clean up. So many organizations that we go into have piles and piles of paper, there's files, there's boxes, there's just general clutter. So by cleaning away all that clutter, you're actually then cleaning away all the extra dust. You're going to help make the air feel cleaner. The space is going to feel cleaner. It's going to be easier to clean and to actually then to sanitize those spaces. So the first thing I highly recommend is having a big cleanup, getting rid of all that excess paper. Put it into archive if you can't get rid of it. But actually going through that process of looking at, well, what do we actually need? What do I need to have here? And how can we make the space feel cleaner? Now, some of the other things that we've been talking about is, well, if we've got, let's say our organization has 100 people and we're on split shift, but let's say we're not actually having all 50 people of our half split shift coming in at once. Even with 50 people in a space that's designed to accommodate 100, it's going to feel very empty. Now, add to that maybe not all of those 50 people are actually coming into that workplace environment. That energy that's going to be in that space is going to be very, very flat. So if we've only got, let's say there's 30 people out of those 50 coming in, how can we create an environment that really enables that energy to happen? By consolidating how they're sitting. So we know we've got to maintain our physical distancing, but how can we ensure that they're sitting as close together as possible rather than having them spread out across the entire space? The other thing is then, if those 30 people are coming in, what is the activity that they're doing when they are coming in? So as we've just talked about, there's a lot of people coming in for that social interaction. They're coming in for meetings and brainstorming, and our meeting rooms may not be able to accommodate that. So is there a way that we can then reduce and remove excess desks, so desks that we're not actually using and we're not needing? Can we take them away and can we create more informal collaboration and brainstorming spaces? Can we put a couple of chairs together and a table in an open air environment, so we're still complying with our distancing requirements, but enabling people to come together and brainstorm and have that engagement? So I think that's one of the things that we need to be considering, because I actually believe longer term that the way that our workplaces are going to be created is that that's exactly what they're going to be there for. They're going to be these collaboration spaces for us to come together and connect to solve the problems that we need to for our within our organizations for our clients. And then we're going to disband. We're actually going to do the actual work that we need to do at home. So the reason we're coming into the workplace is to connect, to collaborate, and to socialize, and then we go home. So the way that our workplaces are going to be created are going to be very, very different. So I think that's one thing that we really need to be thinking about. But how can we then help people to engage in that way? So how can we then influence some of that behavior? So if we know that our workplaces are feeling really flat and lifeless at the moment because there's not a lot of energy in there because of the amount of people that are there, what can we do as an organisation to influence some of that behavioural change? How can we encourage people to engage in brainstorming activities and to connect and to collaborate, to have communal meetings? So I think if we can actually then find ways to create that energy by encouraging different behaviours and different engagements, that's where we'll see some of this transformation in terms of our culture being retained and kept intact throughout this. The other thing is a meeting doesn't need to happen inside. So could we be encouraging people to take walking meetings? If they go outside, they're getting fresh air, they're getting some exercise, they're able to collaborate and connect and communicate still, but it's done in a different format. So encouraging different behavioural changes as we go through. Now, a couple of other simple things that I think can happen is around how we can actually control the rest of our environment. So things like natural lighting is a big one. How can we encourage as much natural light to come into our floor plates as possible? Do we have the blinds down? Do we have things stacked up against the windows that are actually then prohibiting as much natural light penetrating into our floor plate as possible? So what are easy ways that we can go to sort of open our floor plate up and get as much natural light in? Because when we've got access to natural light and to views, we're actually going to feel healthier and we're going to feel happier as well. So looking at those sorts of opportunities. The next one is around introducing plants. Plants are a great way to bring greenery into a space, but they also create a natural reaction in terms of biophilia. So when we feel like we have a connection to nature, we're going to feel better, but it's also going to make the space feel cleaner. We all know that plants help clean our air. So how can they be introduced into our space to make it feel more lush and more green and more fresh, and so that we can actually feel really good in that space? Smell is another big one. So if you think about airline lounges is a great one. So Air New Zealand, when we work with them, they actually have a signature scent. So their lounges have air diffusers that go through them, so that when you walk in there, you have this smell and you have an association then with that brand, with that smell. The same as when you walk past Peter Alexander in the shopping centre, you have that waft of smell that comes from there. It's their signature smell. It creates an emotive connection between your brain and your sense of smell, and then you associate that with that brand. So how can you create a sense of smell in your environment that invigorates and sort of enhances people's mood? But it also then, if you've got the right smell, it can actually help bring people's stress levels down, and it can create a really calming effect. And, a lot of organizations now are looking at how they can create an air diffused smell throughout their space to help create a sense of wellness in the area. When you walk into a day spa, you have that beautiful feeling because you've got this sense of smell that's calming you. The same goes in our workplace environments. Music is another one. When we go to cafes or any other sort of communal space, we have this lovely background music, ambient sound that's coming through. How can we bring that into our workplace environment? So if we haven't got a lot of people in there and we're not having a lot of chatter, some people are going to really enjoy that and some people are not. So how can we then replicate some sort of ambient background white noise to ensure that we've got some sense of sound coming through in the background there? So it doesn't cost a lot of money. You can buy a couple of little Bose speakers for about $400 each. You can pair them together so you can actually then play the same soundtrack across the whole business, but from different points, so that everyone has this even level of sound across the space. So that's another way. And the other one is around encouraging really good nutrition. So if we're feeling good on the inside, we're going to feel much better on the outside. So encouraging people to take lunch breaks, encouraging them to go outside and to actually find good, healthy choices for food. And if you are catering internally for any of those meetings where you're appropriately distanced, looking at how we can then bring in healthy choices as well, and packaging those appropriately so that we've got all of our health requirements addressed. But what all of this is actually doing is it's addressing our brain. So in terms of a really basic neuroscience, one of the things that I have learned is this concept called bottom up, outside in, top down. So if we're not feeling at 100%, by simply changing one thing in each of those categories, we can start to lift our mood and we can pull ourselves out of any sort of depression or anxiety states. So top down is all about changing the way we're thinking about things. So how are we processing our thoughts and what can we do to change the way that we're thinking about things? Outside in is about changing our environment. How can we change the physical things that are around us and the things that we are interacting with that are affecting our mood to elevate that? What do we enjoy? And this comes back to some of our previous concepts around what actually energizes us. Where can we put ourselves so that we are then exposing ourselves to a much more pleasant environment? And then the third thing is the bottom up. So what are we doing from a health and exercise perspective and nutrition perspective? So if we eat better, we get better sleep and we can exercise more, we're going to have a bottom-up effect in terms of our well-being. And all of these things have a very positive effect on our brain and our mental state. So by looking at how we can change our workplace environment, we're actually addressing these things to create a positive environment for our employees. So by changing the environment to make it more interactive and providing as much energy and really connecting in with our culture still, encouraging nutrition and health and exercise, and then also, encouraging different behaviours so that we're actually having that mental stimulation with one another, and having that top down to change the way that we're thinking about things. So there's some really quick and easy ways that you can go and address your workplace environment today to get a better result in terms of how we are interacting in that environment. But I'd love to hear from anyone this morning who's joined us about what you think you could do in your workplace environment to really encourage some really quick and simple changes to see how things could happen in your workplace environments. So look, thank you. If no one's got any quick comments, I will start to wrap it up this morning. Thank you for joining us. I hope you found that useful, and I look forward to you joining me again next week. Bye.